We often assume that anxiety, depression, or fear look the same everywhere, but that's not the case. Can the way a person experiences and expresses mental distress be specific to where they live and the culture they belong to? Today, we're exploring culture-bound syndromes, or cultural concepts of distress, which give us a look at how deep the connection is between culture and psychological well-being. Let's dive into some distinct patterns of distress, recognized only in specific global communities. But first, let us start with a definition. A culture-bound syndrome is a pattern of atypical behavior and distressing experiences that is specific to certain cultural groups or localities. These syndromes possess several distinguishing features that set them apart from universal psychological disorders. First, they are locality-specific. This means they are typically found only in a particular region, ethnic group, or cultural community. For example, the syndrome of 𝗂𝗏 is largely confined to Southeast Asia and China. Second, they rely on culturally sanctioned explanations. The symptoms and their perceived causes are often understood through local belief systems concerning the body, the spirit, social relationships, or supernatural forces. For example, in Haiti, a specific illness, notably maladie moon, is not seen as a biological disease but as an illness sent by others, out of interpersonal envy or malice. Third, they are not always directly mappable to Western diagnoses, making them unique. The unique constellation of symptoms, the cultural interpretation, and the traditional healing practices associated with them are distinct. For example, 𝗬𝗏 in Japan is a unique form of social anxiety, where the fear is focused on offending others with one's body or odor, not just being embarrassed oneself. Now let us move on to the syndromes. These are categorized based on similar themes. Category 1. Body and social anxiety syndromes. Let's begin with syndromes rooted in intense anxiety about the physical self and one's social standing. 𝗂𝗏. 𝗂𝗏 originates predominantly in Southeast Asia and China. It is an acute anxiety and deep-seated fear that one's genitals are retracting into the body and will disappear, which is often believed to cause death. It can be triggered by social pressure or sexual dysfunction. For example, a young man in Singapore becomes panicked and physically grips his genitals, convinced it is shrinking and that he will die if it retracts completely into his abdomen. So the key phrases in identifying this cultural syndrome is genital retraction and panic. Let's move on to 𝗬𝗏. This originates from Japan. This is an intense fear that one's body, its parts, or its functions, such as body odor, facial expression, or eye contact, are displeasing, embarrassing, or offensive to other people. The preoccupation often is with believing one is offending others with a foul body odor. For example, a Japanese student avoids all eye contact and refuses to eat lunch in the staff room, constantly worrying that his body odor or facial expression is ugly or offensive to his colleagues. The key phrases for this culture-bound syndrome are social anxiety and fear of offending others. Let's move on to 𝗏 syndrome. This originates from India and South Asia. This is a common anxiety and hypochondriacal concern among men related to the perceived loss of semen through urine, nocturnal emission, or masturbation. 𝗕𝗂𝗀 is China's version of this syndrome. For example, a male patient seeks medical help, complaining of weakness, fatigue, and depression, which he firmly attributes to a small amount of whitish discharge he noticed in his urine, convinced it represents a catastrophic loss of vital fluid. The key phrases for this are semen loss and severe anxiety. Now let us move on to Category 2, which concerns itself with dissociation, violence, and fright syndrome. These syndromes often involve dramatic, sudden shifts in consciousness and behavior, the first of which is amok. This originates in Southeast Asia, notably in Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, as well as in Scandinavia. Historically, this syndrome or pattern of behavior is well recognized in Southeast Asia and is characterized by sudden outbursts. The term itself is in Malay. This is characterized by a sudden, often unprovoked, frenzied, and violent outburst, usually marked by attacking others indiscriminately, following a period of brooding or a perceived insult. The episode is then followed by exhaustion and amnesia, and so it is described as a dissociative condition. For example, following a period of quiet withdrawal and stress, a person grabs a weapon and rushes into the street, violently attacking people at random, only to collapse later with no memory of the event. So the key phrase here is frenzied violence and amnesia. Let's move on to lata. This originates from Southeast Asia, Japan, and a similar condition, known as jumping Frenchman of Maine, exists in North America. This is described as an extreme hypersensitivity to sudden fright, resulting in an exaggerated startle response, which includes involuntary actions, echolalia or repeating words, and automatic obedience to commands. It often presents as a trance-like dissociation. For example, when startled by a loud noise, a person begins to involuntarily repeat the words spoken by the person next to them, and automatically follows a simple command given by a bystander. And so the key phrase for this is exaggerated startle, mimicry, and automatic obedience. Now let's move on to susto. This originates in Latin America, meaning fright or soul loss. Susto is an illness attributed to a frightening event that causes the individual's soul to leave the body. Symptoms can be vague, including appetite and sleep disturbances, sadness, lack of motivation, and physical complaints. For example, after witnessing a near-fatal accident, a woman develops chronic fatigue, loses her appetite, and exhibits continuous sadness. Her community explains the sickness by saying a terrifying event made her soul flee from her body. So the key phrase for this is soul loss and trauma. Now let's move on to the third category, which concerns itself with anxiety, spiritual, and social pressure syndromes. These syndromes highlight how culture dictates the expression of deep emotional distress, the first of which is ataque de nervios. This originates in Latin America and the Caribbean, and is common among individuals of Latino descent. Translated as attack of nerve, this is a culturally recognized acute response to stressful events, particularly those involving family or loss. Symptoms include intense emotional upset, uncontrollable shouting, crying, and trembling, accompanied by a sensation of heat in the chest rising to the head. It is an anxiety-related panic attack, plus manifestations of shouting and bursting into tears. For example, while coping with the sudden death of a loved one, a man begins to scream uncontrollably, shaking violently, and may fall to the floor, later reporting the feeling of extreme heat rising up his body. And so the key phrase for this is emotional distress and acute anxiety. Next up is malady moon. This originates from Haiti. This is known as scent sickness. This illness is attributed to interpersonal envy and malice, where people harm their enemies by sending illness. It is an attribution to supernatural beings who want to marry the afflicted persons. For example, a farmer suddenly experiences a painful chronic illness that defies Western medical diagnosis. He and his neighbors believe a jealous rival used spiritual means to deliberately send the illness to him. So the key phrase for this is scent sickness and envy. Next is shinbyung, or spiritual sickness or spirit sickness. This originates in Korea. This involves anxiety and somatic complaints, along with a belief in possession by ancestral spirits. For example, an individual reports chronic physical pains, dizziness, and anxiety, which they interpret as a sign that they are being called to become a shaman by an ancestral spirit that has possessed them. And so the key phrase for this is spirit possession and somatic complaints. Finally, we have 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 sisa is an idiom of distress and a cultural explanation among the Shona of Zimbabwe for conditions akin to anxiety and depression. The term translates literally to thinking too much. This overthinking is believed to be the root cause of symptoms like headache and fatigue. For example, a person suffering from chronic headaches, fatigue, and insomnia explains their condition to a healer by saying their mind is trapped in a cycle of worry and analysis over their life problems. In a sense, they are thinking too much. And so the key phrase for this is overthinking and distress. And that's the end of the video. If you found this exploration fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the mind and behavior. What's the most surprising syndrome you learned about today? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.